420radio.org.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Monday, November 30th, 2015, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. So glad that you could be here to join us on the last day of November, as so much is changing here at the Russ Belville Show and at 420radio.org. For those of you listening on that stream, December will be the final month of the Russ Belville Show simulcasting on 420 Radio. Will be exclusively on cannabisradio.com starting at the beginning of the new year. But we wanted to have some transition time, so through the month of December, you'll still be able to listen to me here as we get all the feeds and all of the live streaming and all that stuff ready on cannabisradio.com. So there will be some transition. And starting off in 2016, 420 Radio is going to become an all music station. You'll just get all of the music shows as well as the live shows that Herb Thrasher does and some of his event coverage. So it's going to be more of a cannabis culture sort of channel. We'll cover the cannabis cups, and we'll cover the hemp fests, and we'll do a lot of music and concert coverage and so forth. But that's going to be 420 Radio, and we're going to turn the reins over to Herb Thrasher and Big Daddy Fink and let them make the most of it as a music station. As I move on to cannabisradio.com, and we make that the talk radio news station. So we'll kind of be working in conjunction with each other as well as we cover these different events. Having some difficulty connecting to cannabisradio.com today, so thanks everybody who's come over to Ustream. Hi there, Ustream, and to all the folks listening on 420radio.org while we are still simulcasting. For today's show, we got a great show coming up. Dr. Mitch Earlywine joins us in our Cannabis Q&A, as he does every Monday. We've got a new study out that claims that smoking skunk, as they call it in the UK, aka high-potency marijuana, aka marijuana here in the United States, that smoking the high-potency marijuana is going to lead to the destruction of white matter in the brain, or maybe it was gray matter, something like that. We'll talk to Dr. Mitch about that and the rest of all the studies happening in the world of cannabis, marijuana, THC, CBD, and all of the cannabinoids. That's coming up at 1:30, and you can call in live if you've got a question. The phone number here is 971-533-7111. Also coming up on the show today, I spent the Thanksgiving weekend poring over the so-called Sean Parker Initiative, otherwise known as the Adult Use of Marijuana Act for the state of California. This is the big proposal, getting all the people behind it and the big money supporters behind it. And I dug into it and read every single word. It's 60 pages on the Secretary of State site. I have transcribed it into a hyperlinked document so you can look up every reference, every cross-reference with just a click of the mouse. That totals out to 88 pages. We're not going to go that deep into it, but for the Radical Rant at the end of the show, we'll tell you the main points you need to know about the Sean Parker Initiative, and in an hour or two, we'll dig a little deeper into the taxes and all that kind of stuff. That's all coming up here on the Russ Belville Show. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
The son of a Polish immigrant who grew up in a Brooklyn tenement, he went to public schools, then college, where the work of his life began, fighting injustice and inequality, speaking truth to power. He moved to Vermont, won election and praise as one of America's best mayors. In Congress, he stood up for working families and for principle, opposing the Iraq War, supporting veterans. Now he's taking on Wall Street and a corrupt political system, funded by over 1 million contributions, tackling climate change to create clean energy jobs, fighting for living wages, equal pay, and tuition-free public colleges.
People are sick and tired of establishment politics, and they want real change.
Bernie Sanders, husband, father, grandfather, an honest leader, building a movement with you to give us a future to believe in.
I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
It's time for the Cannabis Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Cannabis Radio News is now available exclusively at cannabisradio.com, featuring reporting from the Associated Press. Now, your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds in the Cannabis Radio News. This is your Cannabis Radio News for Monday, November 30th, 2015. About an hour and a half north of the city of Omaha, the Omaha tribe of Nebraska sits on 300 square miles of reservation land stretching into Iowa's Monona County. Quote, right now, my community has a 69% unemployment rate, end quote, Omaha tribe of Nebraska chairman Vernon Miller said. Miller said the dire economy is leading to desperate solutions. In early November, the sovereign nation polled its members on an idea that's been turning heads, the legalization and sale of medical, industrial, and recreational marijuana. Quote, all three were supported by the majority, end quote, Miller said. But council members said Indian country is even more strictly regulated if the area decided to pursue a marijuana venture. The federal government said they have to sell it on their land and only to their members. That's why the tribe said they need to research whether or not growing and selling pot would be profitable. Prosecutors have been given the green light to pursue charges against medical marijuana users who are smoking pot in their car in parking lots, clarifying a complicated piece of the Michigan marijuana regulatory puzzle. The Michigan Appeals Court says a car is private property, but parking lots generally are open to the public. The court says the state's medical marijuana law prohibits use in any public place. The decision last week involves a man with a medical marijuana card who was smoking pot in his car outside the Soaring Eagle Casino in Mount Pleasant. Robert Carlton was charged with a misdemeanor. The prosecutor appealed after judges in Isabella County said Carlton's car wasn't a public place and dismissed the charge. A group of lawmakers in New York State say the state needs to do more to fight synthetic marijuana. The state Senate's Independent Democratic Conference plans to hold a public hearing Thursday in Syracuse, focusing on the health risks of the recreational substance and suggested ways to combat its use. It's part of a larger push by the group to crack down on what health officials say is a growing problem posed by synthetic marijuana, a drug designed to mimic the effects of marijuana that can have far different effects on the body and brain. State figures show that the number of emergency room visits related to synthetic drug use went up by more than 8 times between April and September when compared to the same period last year. Vireo Health, the parent company of one of New York's approved medical marijuana growers, has signed a deal to begin development of a new class of cannabinoid-based drugs. The Minnesota company, which owns Vireo Health of New York, plans to seek FDA approval for these drugs eventually. The FDA approval would grant the medication's prescription drug coverage, which would allow some who need the drug to get it for a cheaper price. Vireo Health is working with California-based Ligand Pharmaceuticals to use the company's Captisol technology to help develop new cannabinoid-based drugs. Vireo's goal is to incorporate Captisol into cannabinoid-based medicines to create new, patent-protected, FDA-approved forms for the drugs, so they could potentially be taken by mouth, sprayed through the nose, put on the skin, or nebulized. On his radio program today, the American Family Association's Brian Fisher floated his own theory as to why Robert Louis Deere killed 3 people and injured 9 more during a shooting at a Planned Parenthood facility in Colorado last week. Maybe he was, quote, just tanked up on pot, end quote. Insisting that there is no reliable evidence as to what motivated Deere to carry out the attack, despite law enforcement reports that Deere said, quote, no more baby parts, end quote, in reference to the abortion provider, Fisher suggested that perhaps the legality of marijuana in Colorado played a role because, quote, we do know that since he moved to Colorado, he was a pot-smoking nutcase, end quote. Fisher said that, quote, we have seen one story after another, end quote, of people, quote, getting doped up or tanked up or high on pot and going off doing brutal things, end quote, especially after ingesting marijuana edibles. So obviously, quote, there is no question that the kind of pot that is available in Colorado today can drive you into psychotic episodes. I'm going to be interested to see what he had in his system and if maybe this guy was just that tanked up on pot, end quote. This has been your Cannabis Radio News for Monday, November 30th, 2015. I'm Russ Belville.
The Russ Belville Show, where we don't change our position on decriminalization in an election year.
Imagine life without taxes. Let New Era Certified Public Accountants, NewEraCPAs.com, handle your Cannabis 280E and tax strategy. Get your business prepared with New Era CPA's Cannabis Finance Bootcamp. NewEraCPAs.com, with years of experience in the industry, we are one of the nation's leading accounting firms for growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies from Washington to California. NewEraCPAs.com.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct. Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
Well, as we get to behind the headlines, I want to talk just a little bit about, just in general, the headlines we've seen lately from the Black Lives Matter movement, the latest shocking footage that has come across the past week in Chicago of the young man who was shot 16 times by police officers. Now, he was carrying a small folding knife, and he was knifing the tires of police cars. But the guy was shot 16 times, and a lot of those bullets were shot as he was already on the ground. And this, of course, has reignited, once again, the discussion of police brutality against African Americans. And it led me to write this Thanksgiving for High Times, a piece that I called, When It Comes to the Drug War, I'm Thankful I'm White. And I'm hoping people didn't take that in like a white power sort of way. I mean it in a I'd be doing felony time otherwise sort of way. The fact is that I've done a lot of things in my life and gotten away with them when I don't think I would have if I weren't a able-bodied, tall, healthy, educated, white, heterosexual, cisgender American male. I mean, I'm just a Bible short of winning the privileged decathlon. So I've been very lucky. And one of the things I think that we need to do as white activists in this drug war is to begin to listen a whole lot more to the people of color discuss their perceptions of the drug war. I mean, I remember how proud I was early on in my career doing the whole, what's that thing called? Flex Your Rights video that was put out by a group to talk about how to handle police encounters. And while everything it describes it, the constitutionally, correct how to deal with police, it did so in a very white way. right? The encounters with police, I mean, this would work just fine if you're white, but a lot of what would happen in that police encounter if you're black, especially young and black, could go very differently. And so it even caused them to have to release a new video, after they consulted with a lot of people of color, saying, all right, look, here's the video if you're black, what you need to be doing. Okay. And it's just a reality. So those of us white activists need to be listening and understanding that our perceptions are quite different in this. And part of this is recognizing how privilege has played a role in our life. I got to discussing this with a professor recently, who jokingly referred to it as #lucky I'm white. And the professor described a personal experience riding with a fellow white person in the back of a car driven by two friends who were Hispanic. The car end up pulled over by cops. The two Hispanics are pulled out of the car. They end up on their knees, hands in the air with guns pointed at them. But the professor and the white friend were never asked for ID, never pulled from the car, never even talked to. And as the professor explained, at the time we're heading to a festival, so I've got like massive quantities of drugs on me, and the cops don't even give me the time of day. #lucky I'm white. So that impelled me to think of my own #lucky I'm white moments. There's that one back in the 1990s. I'm a passenger in a sports car with the guitar player in my band. We're speeding along a deserted southwestern Idaho freeway at 3 a.m. at some speed greater than 120 miles per hour. And we're stopped by a trooper. Now, we're both fried on meth at the time and both holding a decent personal quantity of marijuana. 20 minutes later, we're driving away with a ticket, and not a reckless driving ticket, but just a simple speeding ticket. Lucky I'm white. And come to think of it, lucky I'm alive and didn't kill anyone. I'm not saying I'm proud of these moments. I don't advocate getting blitzed on hard drugs and trying to set any land speed records, but you can trust that I'll always be honest about my past in the hopes that someone else can learn from my stupidity. Or more recently, last year, I'm with a white friend in Florida. She gets into a fender bender on the highway. I'd recently smoked a joint, I'm sure I reek of weed, but the officer just checks my ID and lets me be. Didn't even give her a field sobriety test or anything. Or last year in Georgia, police were summoned to my hotel room. I invited a bunch of people back to the room for drinks and socializing. Some of them dropped their stash in the room when they heard cops were on the way. There I am facing 3 police officers who've recovered weed, ecstasy, and mushrooms in my room. An hour later, they're escorting me out of the hotel after giving me a trespassing warning. No criminal charges whatsoever. So yes, I'm thankful I've got white privilege, because otherwise I wouldn't be a free man doing this show today.
Well, Lottie frickin' God!
Now that's a good point there. That's a good point. But that's not meant to gloat. It's not meant to be proud. It's just meant to say, I recognize the privilege exists, and I'll be more careful. Stay tuned. We've got some drug war data mining coming up next.
The Russ Belville Show reminds you to never smoke and drive impaired. Hang out for a while. Share.
Get.buzz. .buzz is the internet platform that fuels community interest, excitement, and new experiences. .buzz is the premier online destination for internet users seeking the latest news on a variety of topics. .buzz appeals to groups active in blogging, communications, journalism, advertising, and marketing. .buzz offers registrants a stronger alternative to the shrinking namespace of existing top-level domain names, such as .com, .net, and .org. Get your name now at get.buzz.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
Marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death. Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind. If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face-to-face with the monster of marijuana, he dropped dead from fright.
You know, it's not easy countering 7 decades of propaganda in a 2-hour show, but let's try. It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Reefer Madness Debunked.
Welcome back, everyone. At the end of the news segment, I had mentioned how Brian Fisher from the American Family Association is the latest to conjure up what I call the Christine Tatum theory. The Tatum theory, which states that marijuana makes people psycho, go into psychotic rages and kill. Okay, just like Harry Anslinger, most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind, marijuana. Christine Tatum, she's the wife of Dr. Christian Thurstone out there in Denver, leading prohibitionists, right? And this is the latest talking point among them because, you know, it just so happens that there are people that go nuts in the world. There's people that go psycho and do terrible things. And there are people that consume marijuana. And what tiny little sliver of overlap there is in the Venn diagram, that for people like Brian Fisher, for people like Christine Tatum, that shows you, that proves that, my God, we got to keep marijuana illegal. We got to keep punishing adults who use it. So I just wanted to get into this and listen to a little Brian Fisher, and we'll talk as we listen to it.
I want to talk about this, what we know about the shooter, just for a second, give you some of the information that I've been able to glean from one source or another. Now, we know a number of things about this guy. I mentioned them briefly in the last segment, but this is the profile that is developing of this guy. Here's a story that says motive is unclear. Colorado Springs police Sunday refused to release any information on the motive.
Now, this is not exactly true. There's been a whole lot of information on the motive, specifically this Deer fella saying to law enforcement, no more baby parts. And the no more baby parts, of course, refers to the infamous video, the hacked up doctored video that's been made to condemn Planned Parenthood for its selling of fetal tissue for research at cost, and been turned in on the right. This has been turned into, oh my God, Planned Parenthood sells fetal baby parts, right? Like Frankenstein stuff. And a myth that was promulgated mostly by Carly Fiorina, the Republican candidate for president, who said the lie, said she saw a video with the baby parts that could not possibly have been true, and has stuck by that lie time and time again. So we're clearly talking about right-wing, extremist Christian, anti-abortion intent here from this guy, right? And numerous postings he's made on social media, anti-abortion stuff. And this isn't a diatribe on whether or not you agree with abortion, but I hope we can all agree that walking into places and shooting people is bad. It's certainly not pro-life. But for people like Fisher to try to deny that this has anything to do with the issue of abortion and the rhetoric around it is to desperately try to find a scapegoat. And that's what he's doing here, trying to find a scapegoat other than the intense anti-abortion type of rhetoric that people like Brian Fisher and the American Family Association are in full support of.
With a shooting spree at a Planned Parenthood clinic as the accused shooter prepared for his initial appearance in state court, which is today. A law enforcement official, remember, Robert Lewis was reported as having said somewhere along the line the phrase, no more baby parts. But he also went on a long rant, rambling about many other things, including Barack Obama. So that statement, whatever it was among a number of statements that he made to authorities after his arrest. And so they don't know which one of those things he said amounted to a specific motivation. So they're not even hazarding a guess.
Oh, now come on. Come on now. He's at a Planned Parenthood clinic, shooting people at a Planned Parenthood clinic, and he had said no more baby parts and has a problem with Barack Obama. You think he went to the Planned Parenthood as a political act against Obama? No. It just as a further shows us how tied he is to an extremist right agenda.
So we're going to have to wait for some days until we get more information about what might have driven this guy. But we do know that since he had moved to Colorado, he was a pot-smoking nutcase. And again, we've had stories. I mean, people laugh about this when you talk about people getting doped up or tanked up or high on pot and going off and doing brutal things. But we have seen one story after another where somebody will get, I mean, you got these edible forms of pot in Colorado, brownies and other kinds of things, you know, and they contain a kind of pot, kind of cannabis that is maybe 5 or 6 times more potent than anything that people smoked in college a generation ago. It's not the same pot. It's got a lot bigger kick. And people eating these edibles, it tastes good. They'll eat one. They don't get any effect of it. They don't feel it, so they have another one. Still don't get any effect, so they have a third one. And by the time they get done, they got so much of that stuff in their system that they get hopped up and they get hyped up. We had one guy killed his wife, high on pot. Other guys are jumping off third-floor balconies. So there's no question that...
See, I love that. That's his one story after another. Yeah, you're absolutely right. One story and then another story. You got 2 stories. And one wasn't a guy going psychotic and trying to kill someone else. One is the guy that jumps off the balcony. The other is the guy who goes psychotic and tries to kill someone else. And even in that case, they're not content to prove that was the reason why, because they charged him with first-degree murder. First degree is premeditated, which means that the drug can't be blamed for what he did. So you got nothing is what you got, Brian Fisher. What you got is a right-wing, pro-life, Christian extremist nut job who shot a bunch of people up. Now, did he smoke pot? Yeah, maybe he smoked some pot. So do a lot of people. Jeez. You want to blame the pot, but not calling abortion providers baby killers. That has nothing to do with it, huh? Sure. Got Dr. Mitch when we come back. Stick around.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Marijuana is not addictive, but listening to the Russ Belville Show is.
The Fingerboard Extension has fretted instruments to enhance your creativity. It has new and used guitars and banjos from beginning to high class. The Fingerboard Extension has National Resophonic, Husson Dalton, Larrabee, Heritage and Recording King guitars, and Mike Ramsey, Wildwood, Gold Tone, and Recording King banjos. The Fingerboard Extension also has drum stuff, used gear, and parts. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension, downtown Corvallis, Oregon at 120 Northwest 2nd, or check out the inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com and reverb.com.
Your connection to quality cannabis insurance services is spelled K-A-E-R-C-H-E-R. That's Karcher Insurance. We have worked with ventures like cannabis for over 60 years. We're proud to represent over 50 companies with tailor-made cannabis plans for owners just like you to insure your product, your plants, and your pursuits. K-A-E-R-C-H-E-R spells out their full-service insurance services ranging from commercial to bonds, to personal, from life to health, and more. Contact the team at KarcherInsurance.com and let our experience work for you. That's K-A-E-R-C-H-E-R Insurance.com.
Contact Karen and the team at Karcher Insurance at 1-844-421-3560. That's 844-421-3560.
It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Cannabis Q&A with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and a leading author and researcher on cannabinoids and health, who pins the Ask Dr. Mitch column for High Times magazine Get your questions ready in our live chat or call in to 971-533-7111 now.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Time for our Cannabis Q&A. We got Dr. Mitch Earlywine on the line. How you doing, Dr. Mitch?
Hanging in there. Sorry if the Skype went awry.
Oh, yeah, no problem with that. I've got a weird thing going on with the Spreaker studio to connect to Cannabis Radio today. Maybe we just have gremlins today.
Okay, well, glad to catch you.
Yeah, we've got this recorded. We'll get it up on Cannabis Radio, and it'll be just fine. But Dr. Mitch joins us to talk about the latest stories in cannabis science and research. Also, if you've got a question, you can call in live at 971-533-7111. The phone line is open, and we'll take any of your questions. But we've got a few questions here for Dr. Mitch. And the big story today, I've seen this all over the cannabis news, is that high-potency marijuana could cause brain damage and psychosis. So, we're terrified here, Dr. Mitch. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, I'm confused at how this has turned into a game of telephone. Basically, there was a 2% difference in this really specific micro measurement in the corpus callosum, which is an area of the brain that is basically connecting the two hemispheres. It's insane to me that they looked there kind of in the first place. This is usually a place that's damaged by cocaine, and usually only moderately. I had thought, if I had these brain scans, I would have looked at the hippocampus or something to do with memory, something that, we usually think of as a stereotype for cannabis effects. Suddenly this is like taking on a life of its own. And so they're saying, oh my God, the right hemisphere can't talk to the left hemisphere. There are no actual behavioral things reported at all. The samples are relatively small. I feel like the participants may have been cocaine users and they just didn't fess up somehow. And that, in a sense, this only seems to be showing up for those who use Skunk, which is supposedly stronger, although it's kind of self-reported as well. So, I'm happy to see somebody try to replicate some kind of corpus callosum changes in, high-potency cannabis users, but this is preliminary at best, and it suddenly turned into this marijuana causes brain damage headline, and really disappointing.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that. Thinking about other corpus callosum sort of stuff, am I recalling correctly that there was some study showing a difference in the corpus callosum between gay men and straight men, or was I?
No, that was another brain structure, but we do see a lot of corpus callosum problems in children of alcoholics, and I'm thinking that may also be something. In fact, you just see strange things with, making the right hand do something and then trying to get the left hand to mimic it, and they're not so good. So again, we're talking really subtle, minor things, not something that would actually have an impact on anything going on in daily life. No, that sexual orientation stuff was actually a different part of the brain.
Okay. Let's take a look at the state of Arizona. There was a state representative who published an op-ed entitled "Marijuana is the Enemy of Education." And within it, he cited all these studies that show that marijuana users are going to do worse on IQ tests and they're going to have less ability to do X, Y, or Z. And I was just wondering if in general you could tell us about what studies have shown as far as marijuana's effect on cognition and learning and memory and so forth.
So he unfortunately confuses acute effects and chronic effects. So yeah, right after people smoke cannabis, there are some modest changes in encoding new information, but he, at least the way this is worded, makes it sound like those are permanent or something. And I'm sure if he believes that, he must be completely, freaking out about it all, but it's just not true. Then he summarizes some of the arguments for legalization as if people are saying that cannabis is 114 times safer than alcohol, which I have no idea where that number must have come from. It's the zaniest thing I've seen. And then somehow one study that suggested that cannabis using teens are more likely to drop out of high school he seems to ignore the fact that other data suggests that actually before they used cannabis, they had lower grades and were less sort of engaged in school anyway. So I'm afraid he's going to be disappointed in that, getting rid of marijuana isn't going to actually have this wonderful impact on education he had hoped for. So I understand, if he thought these things were true, why he would be so riled up about it. But unfortunately, these things aren't true.
Yeah, it makes it more difficult to support that kind of opinion when you're basing it on fallacies. Absolutely. Let's hope some of that information gets through to them there in Arizona. Now, moving to the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast, there's a story in the Washington Post about illegal pot farming operations poisoning threatened weasels. We're killing the weasels with our illegal weed. Can you elaborate?
This one does really sadden me because, I love little animals and I want them to have a nice environment. But I think the confusion here, of course, is this is a product of the drug war, not the product of cannabis per se. It looks like folks who are, setting up illegal pot farms are also putting a lot of rat poison around those farms to basically keep the rats away from their plants, which I understand. I mean, you go to all this trouble to plant everything. But then, unfortunately, the weasels, it's ending up in their running water and things like that. But the solution here is not to bust a bunch of people for marijuana possession. The solution is to arrange for legal grows.
Yeah, I don't think the warehouse grows in Denver are hurting any weasels.
Exactly. None of the ones I saw had any weasels anywhere near.
Now, as far as how much energy they're using compared to an outdoor grow, that's a whole other discussion. But let's get to this discussion from a new study that shows public opinion is the biggest reason governments legalize pot. I was kind of surprised by this one because I thought, we stake a lot of the let's legalize marijuana on the tax part, raising tax revenue. But this study says that, what do you know? They're actually listening to the people.
I was slightly heartwarmed by this, so to speak. I thought, wow, it's taken years, but finally, state reps are willing to vote with what their own constituencies want, which is a curious thing. And in fact, maybe some of the folks who have been persuaded it has been that tax and regulate, we'll make enough money to make it worth it argument. But the legislators cited that 95.5% of the reason was to say that, this is what my people want. Well, by all means, that's great. I wish they had sort of paid attention 12, 15 years ago.
Yeah, it may take them a little while to hear it, but they finally heard. So that's good news.
Exactly.
Another study now coming out, this is out of Canada, on cannabis and driving. And according to this, they're using a state-of-the-art sort of simulator. And I'm just wondering what you know about this study, and can a simulator ever really be good enough?
What's interesting is some work back in the 70s suggested that the simulators are a reasonable facsimile, and that if you can get people to take them seriously, they do actually map onto some of the driving that they've done in those tracks with the other cars. And the one advantage of these data are just that they're actually going to have some of the unexpected events and sort of the equivalent of having a rabbit run out in front of you and surprises and things like that. So I think these data will be intriguing as far as providing an estimate of what does cannabis do to drivers in general. I am a little disappointed that they're not focusing more on, say, developing some kind of roadside sobriety thing while they're doing this. It wouldn't take that much time to have folks go ahead and walk a straight line or, follow your finger or something like that in the midst of all this stuff. And in fact, what I'm guessing they're going to get is some incredible variation that co-varies with experience. So I'm afraid we're going to say, oh, guess what? Cannabis does impair driving in the ways we knew before. It's not hard on making turns or things like that, and that people compensate well, like we've seen in some of the data from Amsterdam, where people are less likely to try to pass other cars. They're good about keeping more space between their car and the car in front of them. they start stopping way before the stop sign and stuff like that. That's that's not even really going to be news. But I think anything else they find, we're going to sort of wonder, like, well, why don't you also find what are the indicators of who is impaired and who isn't, so we could actually feel like we've got a roadside sobriety test we could trust.
And the angle I'm wondering about is, if you put me on a simulator, somewhere in my subconscious at all times, I know it's a simulator and I know I'm fine. And maybe I drive a little more recklessly than I would in a real world situation where I know, even though it's a test track, this is real and I could actually physically suffer harm here. And then also, how much does the impact of modern video games affect this? I mean, there's a whole generation of kids now and even older adults, millennials, who have mastered these race car games. Does that affect this in any way?
So what's intriguing is it can have both effects. If they've got intoxicated practice, basically if they've been playing driving games while they're high, they're probably going to really flourish on these. Yeah. The problem is most of those driving games are about kind of driving recklessly and stuff like that. So it's also this classically conditioned time to drive like a maniac.
Yeah.
So it really is going to be hard to generalize. And taking those data from the 70s and saying what was a good analog then applies now may be a bit of a leap.
Yeah, I just remember that video from KIRO in Seattle that had, I call her All Day Addie, the Addie Norton, the medical marijuana patient driving their pot test. And she's at 56 nanograms in her system. And she's on camera saying, you should never drive this high, but if you get the chance, you should do it. Just do it. And she's laughing and having a great old time. So I don't know. We'll have to see how that maps out. Hey, folks, we're just about out of time here with Dr. Mitch, but remember, you can always get a question answered privately if you like by email. The email address is 420research@gmail.com. That's 420research@gmail.com. And who knows, your question might become a study someday, the basis for such. And Dr. Mitch, good luck on all the research and studies that you've got ongoing. I'm sure there's plenty of them.
Thanks a lot, man.
All right. And check out Dr. Mitch's podcast, Burning Issues. You can catch it on cannabisradio.com as well. A 30-minute in-depth look at the latest burning issues in cannabis law reform, science, and research. All right. Stay tuned. We'll be back with the Radical Rant with a deeper look at the Sean Parker Adult Use of Marijuana Act, the initiative to legalize marijuana in California in 2016. I'm Radical Russ from Rolla J Studios in beautiful, legal Portland, Oregon.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got Frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com. And follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter.
MJWellness.com, the largest medical marijuana community in the world. Connect with thousands of patients, doctors, industry leaders, and businesses through shared personal experiences along our worldwide network. Discover new therapies and benefits with content tailored to you. Come grow your network on MJWellness.com. You're not alone. Your wellness matters. Learn, live, and thrive. Check out MJWellness.com today.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
Oh boy, the fun begins today. We are about 11 months away from the 2016 election, and California is ripe for legalization. The big news, of course, is the Sean Parker initiative. Sean Parker, the co-founder of Napster and the early investor in Facebook. He, of the $3.2 billion net worth, has gathered a few of his other rich friends, like some members of the Pritzker family, the Hyatt Hotel billionaire family, and some others. Justin Hartfield, the multimillionaire, I think, is on board with this, has put together the Adult Use of Marijuana Act. This is for 2016. Already, Marijuana Policy Project and Drug Policy Alliance have walked away their support from Reform California over toward the billionaire-led Adult Use of Marijuana Act. And over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be digging deep into all of these different initiatives to legalize marijuana in California, Arizona, Nevada, Massachusetts, and Maine, and Michigan. So, week by week, I'm going to probably tackle about one per week, and I'm going to completely hyperlink it up. I've done this for the past couple of elections that have had marijuana legalization on the ballot. You can look back through my radicalruss.com archives. But I find if I make a hyperlinked version, first of all, I got to find all the outbound hyperlinks to like section, 21 USC section 863, right? U.S. code, right? Well, you link to that, and when you link to that, you got to read it a little bit, gives you a little better information. And then there's internal hyperlinks, like when something in section 11362.2 refers to paragraph 3, subdivision A of section 11362.1. Like, oh my God. And that's what gets frustrating to a lot of people trying to read legalese, is you have to jump back and forth throughout the document. Reading the law is a little bit like reading computer code. There's subroutines and there's, definitions and all sorts, have to dimension your variables, all that kind of stuff. So for me, it's kind of a logic game. I like reading through it because it's like reading code, but I can understand where it's frustrating to people. So online, I've posted a PDF of this Sean Parker initiative with my commentary and highlights along with all the hyperlinks. So this is up at Scribd. So it's one of those online document things with PDFs, right? SCRIBD.com. The hyperlinked version, it's called Hyperlinked Text of the California Adult Use of Marijuana Act. So by going through this and hyperlinking it and looking up all the references, I get a pretty deep look at what's going on with these initiatives. Now, that's not to say I know everything. And by God, for certain, it's not to say I know everything in California. California is its own nation, man. It's a whole different ball of wax when it comes to reading all of their code. So I may have missed some stuff. And I think I already have missed some stuff, come to think of it. But generally, this is a pretty in-depth look at this Adult Use of Marijuana Act. The first thing to note is in section 11362.1, it makes legal the possession of an ounce of flour, 4 grams of concentrate, and 6 mature marijuana plants. That becomes legal. Oh, and all the marijuana that those 6 plants produce. Okay, so we can possess, process, transport, purchase, obtain, or give away to persons 21 years of age or older not more than 28.5 grams of marijuana. So actually, a California ounce weighs a little heavy. The actual ounce is 28.3495 grams, I think. 3475, maybe. I don't know. But it's like 24.3 something. And so a California ounce is 28.5. That's very nice. 4 grams of concentrates. A lot of people don't realize concentrates are not legal in California. Now, again, keep in mind, everything I say about legal in California means for people who don't have medical marijuana permission slips. Medical marijuana changes the whole thing in California because medical marijuana is kind of quasi-legalization in California, actually. It's legalization with a doctor's permission slip. But not that. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about if you walked into California today, parachuted in off of a plane, came in by boat, whatever, you set foot in California and you don't have a doctor's note, concentrates are illegal. That's just the fact. So it legalized 4 grams. Now, that's a little weird because Oregon has legalized an ounce of concentrate. I should say an ounce of extract and a pound of concentrate. Extracts being just the things that are made with volatile solvents, explosive anes, butane, hexane, propane, and supercritical CO2. We can have a pound of finger hash. We can have a pound of rosin press. We can have a pound of ice water hash. But no, concentrates in California, 4 grams. Concentrates in Washington state, 7 grams. So it's going to be even more restrictive than Washington state's concentrates. And I think Colorado's is an ounce and Alaska's an ounce. Cultivating 6 mature plants. They don't actually say mature plants. They say living marijuana plants, but that would mean they could be mature, right? And possess all the marijuana produced. Now, you can't transport all the marijuana produced. So you could only possess it at the place where the plants produced it, right? But at least it's like Colorado where it's all the marijuana produced. Not like Oregon where it's 8 ounces, right? If you grow your 4 mature plants and get 4 ounces off a plant, then you've got twice as much weed as you should have. Not going to have that problem in California. This is under the Sean Parker initiative, of course. Now, the cultivation has to be out of public view in a locked space, and it's only 6 plants per residence, not 6 plants per person, so that can be a problem. City and counties can enact reasonable regulations on personal grows, but they cannot ban indoor grows. They cannot completely prohibit personal possession and cultivation inside a private residence. They can completely prohibit outdoor personal grows, though. So that's interesting. There are some new fines. Public toking becomes an infraction with a $100 fine. Now, I'm told, Steve Cubby actually mentions this on my Facebook page, that currently there is no punishment for public toking in California. I pointed out a section of California code that shows loitering for the purposes of drug activity is a misdemeanor, and drug activity can be possessing or ingesting controlled substances, of which marijuana is one. So I'm not sure how public toking isn't illegal, but if it is, it does become illegal. It's a $100 fine, and that comports pretty well with Washington, Oregon, and Colorado. I think Washington, D.C. lowered it to $25 fine. Toking in a non-smoking area within 1,000 feet of a school or an open container in a car is a $250 fine. And this was also pointed out to me as this open container thing is a problem. $250 fine, because that doesn't currently exist. Although Washington State has just created a open container law. The rest of these are punishments that already exist in California law. Manufacturing solvent concentrates subject to 3, 5, or 7 years in prison and a $50,000 fine. Although I'm told, again, Steve Cubby brings up that RSO would mean you'd get this fine, or you'd get this 3 to 7 years. I still have yet to look that up, so we'll check that out. And if you violate local personal grow ordinances or grow too many plants or grow them in a way that are visible or unlocked, you can get a $250 fine, just an infraction. DUID is still illegal. You still can't give marijuana to minors or use them in any sort of marijuana operation. It's still illegal in prison, doesn't end malpractice or negligence suits, and, very important, employers can still maintain drug-free workplaces. So they can have policies prohibiting the use of marijuana by employees and prospective employees. So that means drug testing will still be around. Discrimination, job discrimination against cannabis consumers will still exist. Prohibited in government buildings, that's not too much of a shock, is it? Not surprised that they're going to prohibit in government buildings. And landlords can prohibit conduct otherwise permitted under Section 11362.1 on the individual's or entity's private property. Now, this is where that hyperlinking comes into effect, because the stuff in 11362.1 is your ability to possess marijuana. That's right. This one gives landlords the ability not only to ban your use of marijuana or ban your cultivation of marijuana, they could actually ban your possession of marijuana on their property. Not to mention the smoking of marijuana on their property. This could be very problematic. This is in section 11362.45, paragraph H, regarding private property. So that's one that I wouldn't be surprised to see people having a big problem with. It does say that it does not affect any of the laws pertaining to the Compassionate Use Act, the medical marijuana laws. Medical marijuana has recently become more regulated in California thanks to a series of 3 bills that were signed by Governor Brown. And most of Section 5 here in this Sean Parker initiative just basically comports with what they put together in those new laws. It basically says medical marijuana users have to follow the new medical marijuana laws. So not much to add there. One interesting thing is that the agencies that control the medical marijuana are now going to become the agencies that control the commercial industry. So we're going to have a situation like Colorado where there's just one marijuana enforcement division, but in California, it's going to be called the Bureau of Marijuana Control, and it will control both recreational and medical side of marijuana. There'll be an appeals process that's quite detailed, and different California department agencies will also have some regulatory control. Department of Consumer Affairs will handle transportation and sale. Department of Agriculture will regulate cultivation, and Department of Public Health will regulate manufacture and testing. That's all the time we got here for hour 1, but if you stay tuned for hour 2, we'll continue looking at the Sean Parker initiative. There's all sorts of interesting things here with regard to what type of licenses there will be, how many square feet a marijuana grower can grow on, and inspections by police officers. When and where can they happen? You'll find out if you listen to Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. You can also call in with your questions. We take live calls in Hour 2 at 971-533-7111. For everyone here at CannabisRadio.com, I'm Radical Russ, live from Rolla J Studios in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it.